Good morning, Illinois. Good morning, Illinois exporters. Thank you very much for joining our webinar today, Illinois Online Global Program and Go Global with Website Localization. We're just waiting for the last people to join us on the webinar, but we're delighted to be here today to talk about the online world and how online tools can help exporters. We're also really pleased to see so many different companies from different sectors and parts of Illinois, first of all, from all over the state and from all different types of sectors, manufacturing, light engineering, food and agribusiness, construction sector, a lot of service companies too, happy to see that always, and some consumer products companies. So really a broad spectrum of companies represented today in today's webinar. Just to say that the webinar today will be 45 minutes long. It will involve some, at the end, we'll have some time for live Q&A, and we would really encourage you throughout the webinar to pop the questions into the question box on the right-hand side of your screen. Let me introduce myself first of all. My name is Susanna Hardy, and I am the Online Director for Content and Client Services at IBT Online. And I'll be hosting and managing and creating a lot of this webinar today. But I also want to introduce our two other guest speakers. Today we have Margot, Director of the Office of Trade and Investment at Illinois Department of Commerce, and Jim, who's Director of the Illinois SBDC International Trade Center. And I will also let them introduce themselves and talk a bit more about their own sides. But just first to say about the webinar itself, we will be talking through online tools. We will be talking through global programs and how you can, as Illinois exporters, you can benefit from this, how you can do this. And we will be sending you the slide deck and a recording following this presentation. So that means that you can really sit back, relax, just enjoy the webinar as it is. You don't have to take notes. We will be sending you the slide deck, and all contact information is on the slide deck as well. So we would encourage you just to ask questions, put them in the question box, save them till the end, and to reach out to us all after the webinar if you have further questions. And with that, I'd like to turn to Margot, if she would like to just introduce the Office of Trade and Investment and introduce herself, please.
Thank you, Susanna. Good morning, and thank you all for joining us today. I'm so happy to partner with my colleague Jim Foley, who manages the International Trade Center at Bradley University, and the folks at IBT Online to discuss the importance and benefits of website localization and to share resources that the state of Illinois can offer Illinois small businesses to grow their global footprint and create more jobs here in Illinois. For those of you that are unfamiliar with our office, the Illinois Department of Commerce's Office of Trade and Investment, or OTI as we're often referred, connects Illinois companies to global opportunities by providing export assistance and helping build a pipeline of foreign companies that are interested in establishing a presence here in Illinois. Our primary mission is to put Illinois and Illinois products on the map and offer a platform to bring Illinois companies face-to-face with buyers and partners. We do have offices in Chicago and Springfield, as well as regional offices in 7 foreign countries. Our team of seasoned professionals provide businesses with market research, identify potential distributors, customers, and partners, generate leads, lead major international trade shows, and facilitate introductions to foreign governments, chambers, trade associations, academic partners, and so many others around the world. Another way we can help is through the Illinois State Trade and Export Promotion Program, otherwise known as ISTEP. Many of you may be familiar with that program. It provides financial assistance through reimbursements to eligible small businesses. Companies may choose to participate in one of our group trade missions or exhibit in international trade shows of their choosing, travel overseas on business-to-business matchmaking missions, apply for product certification assistance, and of course, you guessed it, companies can also apply for website localization assistance. The ISTEP program can reimburse companies up to $7,500 depending on the scope. For companies that are interested in website localization, since that's what we're focusing on today, we can provide 50 to 75% reimbursements up to $3,000. And of course, you'll hear IBT Online explain the benefits of branding or localizing your website and how they can help you do so. You can, of course, apply for iStep and use any vendor that you choose. Companies can apply to the program on a rolling basis for any of the assistance programs that I mentioned. However, funding is very limited, and I would encourage you to apply as early as possible. After you've heard from Jim and Susanna, please feel free to reach out to me or any member of my staff to learn more about iStep and ways OTI can help you and your company grow internationally. With that, I leave it. I just wanted to share with you a little bit about our program and our office and encourage you to reach out to us if there's anything else that we can help with. We're here to help. Thank you, Susanna. I turn it back to you.
Thank you, Margot. That's great. Really a fantastic resource for Illinois companies and exporters. And I would really encourage you. Margot has a fantastic team, very dedicated to helping Illinois companies. Now, I want to also just to have a quick introduction for Jim and some of the services of the SBDC International Trade Center. Jim?
Yes, hi. Also glad to partner on this webinar today. We are the local centers, so if you need assistance and want someone close by, we have a network of about 10 Illinois Small Business Development Center international trade centers around Illinois, mostly housed at colleges and universities. Glad to help you. No wrong door, so if there's any confusion over who can help or what kind of program, one of the trainings the ITC has is how to make referrals to do the assistance that you see listed there on the screen. I'm also really interested in this topic because I think it's one of the areas that has changed the most in the last few years. It's really transforming our concept of how you enter a foreign market. And I think the old days we would have thought of website internationalization as simply translating, and it's gone way beyond that. So when IBT first reached out to the state, I was really excited to see the material because I think you're going to learn a lot about the importance of using website localization way beyond the concepts we had in mind, say even 5 or certainly 10 years ago. So glad to be here. You'll have my contact information at the end, as well as a follow-up email, and I'll turn it back to Suzanne.
Thank you very much, Jim.
You're welcome, Susanna.
Thank you. Right, I just wanted to say a very quick word then on who we are and what we do, how we do it. We are a private company, IBT Online. We are 100% focused on SMEs. So that's our core group, our core client base, our small mid-cap companies who export and who are interested in using online tools that we can provide them to help that export. And to drive up their export businesses and reach new markets and really succeed in that. And we do that really through 2 things. We do that through something called website localization, which we're going to talk about today, and online international marketing, which goes together with website localization as you use your local website as a platform for this. Now, we have offices in the States, in the US. We have offices also in France, Germany, the UK. And then we have partnerships we have partnerships in Chinese staff, Japanese staff, Russian staff. So we cover pretty well all markets. We have done websites, and we'll show some case studies later in some major ones, Germany, China, Japan. But we've done some pretty esoteric ones too, Estonia, American Samoa ones. So there are some exceptional ones. There's no market in the world that is not online today, and I think that's what's so exciting for us, is to be able to help companies to go online. And I guess our core fundamental view is really that you can grow your business, you can grow your brand awareness through website localization, international online marketing. For us, and I guess we're biased here, but for us, it is the single most important and certainly most cost-effective tool in an exporter's armory today. We have seen a lot of case studies to show return on investment and how it enables companies that are small mid-cap companies to really punch above their weight and really compete internationally against much larger companies. And that's what gives us a real thrill, is really focusing on SMEs and allowing them to really stretch resources as much as possible with online tools. So what we're going to talk about today is really, I'm going to first sketch out sort of an overall picture of the sort of online world today, then focus on what is website localization, what exactly do we mean by it, and what exactly do we mean by online marketing, and then try and give you some case studies and examples of companies, some of them including Illinois companies that we work for at the moment that have been using websites and localized websites. And I'm going to show you how they do that with distributors and so on. And then some possible strategies for Illinois SMEs and how it links into Margot and Jim and the support that the state of Illinois can offer eligible companies. So I'm going to try and make it as focused as possible on this. And as I said, we have left some time at the end for questions. And you can always get a hold of us as well outside the webinar. So with that, we're going to talk about what I've called the big online picture. This is sort of, the big overview landscape of it all. And I guess the first thing we always sort of say for us, the overall mantra is why export at all? And this is something you'll hear again and again from U.S. commercial services, from all export people, is that exporting allows a company to spread its risk, to grow faster, to have increased competitiveness, and to increase their economies of scale. So in the long term, it grows your business. Remember, the world actually is, if you're not exporting your business, someone else is exporting to your market. So that's another way of looking at it. You need to be as performance and driven and as outward looking as other companies are, and they're looking at your market. So why don't you look at their market too? It's one way of looking at it. So then another thing that the certainly U.S. commercial services and others say a lot is basically, there's outside the United States can be a very beneficial place for U.S. exporters. And it's interesting to see just where Illinois exports so well. We're delighted with those numbers. And I first normally said, Illinois exports to Canada. Well, that makes sense. But then I started drilling down in the numbers. In fact, Illinois exports to the world. You are the #1 Midwest exporter. And that's something I think to be really proud of. The #5 exporter in the United States. So I think that's, again, really worth tipping your hat to. I do say that Canada is the #1, Mexico #2, but then China. But in fact, if I take all of the EU countries, Germany, France, including the UK at the moment, in fact, it's right after Canada. So Canada followed by EU, Mexico, China, and Japan. So a lot of different countries there, and across all sectors. I haven't really put that in so much in this slide, but it's very striking to us to see how much of how well represented Illinois exporters are across global sectors. And for us, again, very heartening. 90% of Illinois exporters are small and mid-cap companies. So again, this is for us an exciting thing, since this is where we focus on. So that's the sort of state of Illinois on that. Now, what do we look at in America for the online world? Just looking at the U.S. first of all, and this is produced annually by a company called Hootsuite. They produce updates as well, but it's interesting to see that the entire U.S., North America, Central America, South America, it's about 1 billion people. The vast majority, 2/3 of them are online, one way or another. And, 2/3 of them, or 3/4 of them are online, 2/3 of them are using social media. So it's really, the common factor. This is not something you might look at your own Illinois world and say, wow, everybody here is online and we have to have a website for our domestic presence. But this really comes home as well to say, if you're looking across all the Americas, this is the case for all of the Americas, that everyone is online. What's interesting for us, though, is that while they are online globally, they are still very local. people use the websites and online media in a very local way. In other words, even if they do speak a lot of English, if you go to a lot of countries today, I was in Panama recently. Everyone seems to speak English in Panama. Okay, but they're still searching in Spanish. They will still look and have more trust in their native language than they will in a global website. So that's worth thinking about as well when you're looking at websites. I will get back to that in more detail. Now, just to give you a snapshot of the entire world, and again, you will have copies of the slide deck to give you if you're interested in those numbers. The entire world, pretty well, this was done in January, pretty well 4 billion people are active users of the internet, which is worth thinking about. 4 billion people, and nearly all of them have some access to mobile. So really, it's mobile first on that. And that's, again, a very important factor when you're looking at websites globally. And I wanted to point out as well that out of the sort of, let's say 4 billion people are on the internet, 3 billion of them are using social media actively. And by actively, we're talking about some of them, daily, and certainly, weekly. And this is a phenomenon that a lot of people involved in the web talk about, which is that social is catching up with search. And what this means is that people are increasingly using social media platforms to engage in internet searching and internet news and views. Now, we all talk a lot about how people get or teenagers get a lot of their news, for example, from Facebook. But this is not just limited to teenagers. We are all getting a lot of our information from social media these days. It's really an amazing, very revealing to see some of the more mobile markets, much more mobile than the United States, ones that discovered the internet first through their mobile phone. So a place like Indonesia, India, Mexico, Vietnam, these are China. These are places that probably have a bigger ability to access the internet through their mobile phone than through their computers. And therefore, they tend to have a greater participation with social media. In other words, if you have a consumer product and if you're looking to reach out to them, then you need to be on social media. That's B2C. But these days, B2B, it applies to you too. If I am a Mexican and I'm sitting in Mexico City and I'm saying, where's the best place to buy a screwdriver today? I will go not necessarily on Google. I'm going to look, in fact, on my social media. I'm going to reach out to various WhatsApp groups and ask them. So, that's worth thinking about. And it's basically, that will define how you use social media and how you design programs and strategies for your social media. Website localization, what is it? How do you get it? And do you need it? That's basically what we're going to talk about now. The best way to really explain social media, about website localization, is to explain how search engines work. And the key to understand about search engines is that they are localized. In other words, they are market specific and client orientated or consumer orientated. So if I'm sitting in the UK at the moment, in our UK office, google.co.uk is very different from google.com, even if they're both English. They are different search engines. The algorithms are tweaked for the UK versus the United States, and they're tweaked for where I am sitting in the UK, and probably for my previous types of searches. So Google wants to please me. It's focused on me, not on you, the person who wants to be found. Therefore, you, the company that wants to be found, you need to make sure that Google likes you, or the other search engines, Baidu or Yandex or Naver, that the search engine likes you, considers you of use to the person searching. So if I'm a German sitting in Germany and I am looking for a product, I will go on google.de, because Google has about 95% market share in Germany. I'll go onto Google. Google.de, it's in German. It's orientated towards German searches, German likes, German dislikes, and it will not necessarily prioritize a great company in Illinois because it thinks that the great company in Illinois might be great, but might also be irrelevant to the person searching in Germany. So you need to show, if you want to target the German market, B2B or B2C, then you need to make sure that German Google thinks that you're relevant to the German searcher. And that's, I think, the key to understanding a localized website, is that it is market-focused, client-focused. So this is a screenshot I took recently. On the right-hand side, you have a search result for red shoes. I'm sitting in Bristol, the United Kingdom, so I put red shoes in, and I got lots of things to look at in women's red shoes in the UK. House of Fraser, Debenhams, Zalando UK, Zalando's German, but anyway, M&S, like a little bit of eBay down there. And I had a colleague of mine type in Illinois, who's sitting in Illinois, red shoes. And I got Macy's, Nordstrom, lots of other places, Wikipedia, very different search. And that's for something extremely generic like red shoes. So this is an English language website in each case. And in each case, google.co.uk is different from google.com. So that's just sort of to bring that home to you. So when we talk about a localized website, we basically have tried to bring it down to about 10 different attributes that we can focus in on, and they're listed here. So as you see, one of them is that it's adapted to the local language. In other words, that it's translated. The 9 others are not about language, but about the implementation, the engagement with the local market, and making sure that the local search engine algorithms like that website. Just to give you an example, regulatory requirements. If you, as a US website, do not have the correct regulatory requirements for Europe, you will be pretty well banned from most European website searches, certainly after May 2018, which is when a new GDPR, a general data protection regulation, comes into force across Europe. So that's worth thinking about. Another one that's worth thinking about is hosting locally. If you're not hosted locally, you will be quite slow for when you're loading up and downloading, when your prospect is opening your site and downloading anything. And he's not going to stick around if that's the case. And in some markets, let's say, for example, China, if you're not locally hosted, you will not be referenced at all by Baidu. So there's a lot of things here which are not just about translation. And even the translation has to be adapted and optimized. So the words have to be optimized for search engine searches as well. So translation, in a sense, is just the tip of an iceberg, and really, really just the small tip of an iceberg when you're looking at website localization. Put it to you another way. If you, as an Illinois client, say, I think Mexico would be a great market for us, let's put some Spanish pages on. Get someone in your company, stick a couple of Spanish pages on your US website. You will attract Spanish-speaking people in Illinois, and perhaps that'll sort of ripple out a little bit, but you will not be credited with a Mexican-enabled, justified, strong website. You will simply not be present in Mexico. So that's if a website localization is much more than that. Now, There are famous companies, many big companies that they know exactly what they're doing here on the web. And they basically said, we're going to go international, global, as fast as possible. And the only way to do that is through the internet. And therefore, they have created an internet strategy and business model, which is all about localization. I mean, Apple, for example, has over 130 websites just for its core Apple, and each one of them is embedded locally. Now, what we find very exciting is that, I mean, who wants 130 websites? It sounds like a nightmare to me, but small, mid-sized companies can now use a similar strategy to really reach out and grow their exports in a very cost-effective way. And just by targeting which are their core export markets, which are their core prospective markets, where are their best distributors, where can they need most help, and go after those export markets with dedicated websites. For us, it's pretty clear. We see a lot of SMEs really benefiting from that whole internet ability, and the ability for distributors to find you easily, for prospective clients to find you easily, and most of all to build brand and credibility in the local markets. So I guess this is just a quick sketch of how we see most companies today. You know, on the left, companies I think used to be at the center of their own world and say, okay, we have these individual customers, we have these bilateral relationships with each one of our partners or customers. And today it's just so much more complex because of the internet and because of social media, so that your customers are all talking to each other, and you need to be able to own that space and get involved and compete within that space. I just want one slide then on social media. We have a lot of different webinars on this if you have an interest in it. It is any website strategy today has to be orientated towards saying what point and how do we use social media across different markets in order to engage with prospective clients. Just one little number for you, if you like. If you look at Facebook is available in about 100 different languages. So Facebook is completely localized as well in terms of its local presence. Because it owns WhatsApp and Instagram and Facebook Messenger and lots of other sort of apps, it has nearly 5 billion, these numbers are out of date, nearly 5 billion reach across the world today. The other big ones that one should know about are all in China through Tencent and Qzone. As I said, there's a lot of webinars on social media that we've done in the past. And if you have an interest, let us know. I want to talk about some case studies, and one of the very first ones is sort of just looking at how companies use different websites for different activities. And it's one of the things I think that people don't always realize about the ability to adapt and tweak a localized website. So let's say, for example, you have a domestic website, that's sort of your mothership, and then you'll have a couple of smaller scale local websites which help you in your export markets. And if you've got a trade show coming up, you can push that part and push the fact that you're in a trade show out there, engage with people before the trade show, make yourself very visible ahead of the trade show, optimizing the trade show expenses. Equally, a lot of our clients use their local websites to find distributors, to really locate good distributors and validate them, and we'll get on to some examples about that. It's also a great way of putting all the marketing information and distributor information in one place. And finally, sort of just as an ongoing presence, localized websites for your export markets allow you to build and grow your reputation in that market. And that is really key in any market, for any company, obviously. But in certain markets, it's absolutely essential. The bigger the market, the more important it is that you have a brand that has a strong reputation for your particular product. So the examples I wanted to highlight today, really just a lot of them go towards distributors and that because looking at the attendees for this webinar, a lot of you work, I believe, through either distributors and agents. So I've taken quite a few of the case studies for distributors because we find that localized websites allow you to do a lot of work for your distributors. And I'll let you read through all of this text at leisure and just get straight on to the case studies. The first one here is a company in Roscoe, Illinois. They're called All World Machinery. And they, what's interesting for us with them is that they have a huge number of stock keeping units, like over nearly 1,500 stock keeping units that they basically provide online to tier 1, tier 2, and OEMs. So they are really servicing very large customers very often, and they have to make sure that their brand is absolutely spot on. They have to make sure that there's not a single issue ever with regards quality and service. They distinguish themselves by having a superb level of service and customization, and nothing is too small for them to help you out with. Their core market that they wanted to develop was Mexico, and they wanted to have a good, strong e-commerce base into Mexico because a lot of their biggest OEMs are in Mexico. And so they decided to do something called Option C, and you'll see which types of options there are later. But they wanted basically a fully customized e-commerce platform for all different kinds of sectors, for lots and lots and lots of different SKUs. The difference between their US e-commerce enabled website and their Mexico website is that if you're in Mexico and if you look at their Mexican website, it feels, looks, acts, and is totally Mexican. It is something you trust, and it has a strong visibility, a strong service and customization element to it. So it maintains their brand identity across different markets. And that was very important to All World Machinery, particularly when they started out in Mexico, and that's why they paid particular attention to that on their website. The next one, this is actually an Ohio company, but they have a very strong, large presence in Illinois. They chose really an option B, which is a 2-market expansion. And from this, they chose first to target their largest markets, which was Germany and Poland. Some of their biggest markets, client bases, are either in agricultural machinery or in cars and the automotive sector generally, trucks, cars, bikes, and things. And a lot of them were in Poland and Germany, so those were the sites they wanted to focus on in the beginning. It had a really strong success, so that within actually about 9 months, they extended that to their 2 other large markets, which was France and Spain. So they now have dedicated websites in those 4 markets. The objective of the websites in each case is to maintain a presence there in order to maintain sort of front of mind to the major prospects. Their biggest clients are all very, very large OEMs, original equipment manufacturers, and they need to maintain a continuous presence so that when the OEM thinks of them, they'll say, yes, Peterson Spring, I want to get onto them. So that's so it's building that global brand over time, and obviously in the short term it's generating leads for the distributors in those places, but it's really building a strong, continuous presence in those markets. The next one is actually a Florida company, but it's interesting for us as well because it was a very strong. Again, a strong case where a small and medium-sized company is pitching to very large companies, in this case to airline groups. And they had very strong, good distributors in China. China was going to be their top growth market. But they said, these agents in China are good. They're not engineers, first of all, though. And secondly, I'm not sure that they're always credible enough. So they decided to give them an extra benefit, an extra tool kit and provide some Chinese websites. So they started out in China and Mexico as their two core websites, export websites. The Chinese distributors ran with this very quickly and were able to secure the largest ever China order that they had within 3 months, just really, really supported by the website, because the Chinese client finally really understood, one, their product, and two, that ASG were very committed to the Chinese market. They said, well, if you've actually gone to the trouble of making a good Chinese website, and it is a really good, engaged, fully localized website, then you must also really care about us. Then you must also have good products. So there was a very strong reaction then from the Chinese saying, okay, you've got a great website, localized with Baidu search engine, in great Chinese, fully online, supported by this distributor. This means that you must have this. This gives you extra credibility for your brand. So again, helping distributors. They've since gone on to do localized websites in Japan and Brazil, which are their other two very large markets. Casca Marine is from the Great Lakes area. Again, a small mid-sized company. Their big markets are mostly in Europe, but they have some strong prospects in Mexico and Australia. And their websites, what's interesting here as well is that their websites differ quite a bit between different types of markets. In Australia, they don't have any of their de-icing equipment, that's for sure. They're all focused on the pond side. In Germany, they have found that they've had to do a lot of information blogs, a lot of content in order to build brand, because the Germans were continuously asking more questions and they wanted to have more detail. Very different from a UK market, which was much more picture, and they wanted to have strong imagery. So again, we were able to just tweak the different types of websites in order to respond to the different types of demand and markets on that. And again, they have built out these websites over time, starting first with just 2 websites for Germany and France, and now extending it across 5 or 6 other ones. This is one of my last case studies, just again, another US SME from the Great Lakes. This is a company which services many, many different types of sectors. They go from agribusiness to retail, to schools, to government. So they have lots of different verticals, which means that they could have several different distributors in different markets. One of the key challenges that the company has, therefore, is one, finding more distributors, managing the distributors, and monitoring the distributors. And what they've actually done is to say, all right, in order to do that, we're going to put everything online. This allows all distributors in one market to find out and have exactly the same resources. So nobody's quibbling that they don't have the same resources as everybody else. 2, we're going to use the website to reach out and find good local distributors, and that's what they do a lot of the time. And 3, we can now monitor a lot of what our distributors are doing and keep a link with the end client, because now the leads come into the company and the company then gives the leads to the distributor. So the distributor focuses on what he does best, which is logistics, after sales, things like that, trade shows, so on. And the website acts as sucking in and monitoring the end client and maintaining a window on the end client, which was very important to this company. So you can see that, again, this is a use of a website for an international market, which is allowing you to manage distributors, find distributors, and even keep an eye on the end client. So that was really a good example of that. All of these examples can be seen, by the way, on our website. If you go onto our website, there's a section about case studies, and they have videos of all of those ones and other companies that you can go through. Now, I want to talk about the Illinois Online Global Program, which we feel is important and a tremendous attribute that you can, harness and grab onto to allow you to get localized websites and online marketing. And that's whether you're B2B, B2C, whatever the route to market. It's really about having localized websites for building online success and exports. So really, there are three different options that we've built out. The first really is to focus on one country-specific website. And it's a very specific, it can be quite a small website, it's 1,000 words, so it's just 12 pages, it's about us, contact us, the products, and so on. We will fully localize that, fully translate it, optimize it for the local search engine, whether that's Baidu in China or Google in Colombia, doesn't matter. We're going to put it on a very strong content management system, which is ideal and made for international markets and multilingual platforms. We're going to set up reporting and even give you some training in terms of for Google Analytics. And get your domain name and a link to your US website. If you're an eligible company, you qualify for the reimbursable $3,000 grant, $3,000 from the Illinois OTI. So this is, I think, something as a first step. It's a very easy first step. We typically take 3 months to deliver this. It's an easy way of companies to say, let's test the water out a little bit. Let's see what it's like, and go for just one dedicated website in one market. It's a light site, but it should be very efficient and very hardworking for you. Our option B is more economical because we're able to spread some of the costs over in some ways, but it is for 2 country websites. So 12 pages, 2,000 words in total, each country fully localized with links to the US website and search engine optimized for each market. And these can be any markets in the world. These do not have to be both European or both Southeast Asian or anything like that. You can have one of those country-specific websites in Mexico and the other in China, or Germany and Japan, wherever you want in the world. And again, I think that is a very strong tool to be able to harness for Illinois companies. Once again, you're lucky to be able to call on the Illinois OTI for eligible companies for a $3,000 reimbursement that would go to the setting up of 2 country-specific websites. And the third option is really, it's up to you. If you've got a very specific project in mind, and would like to talk us through, then we would build you a customized multi-market country-specific websites in whatever market and however it is. Basically, this is for someone who wants something like an e-commerce enablement or some other types of apps or something, a very specific type of websites, or possibly larger websites than the ones I've talked about so far. So those are the 3 options, A, B, and C, and we would be delighted to talk through these options with you and reach out and go through and how we would do them, what would it involve, and so on. So those are the 3 options. And our next steps really is just to either say contact our person for Illinois, which is Jared Grossman, to talk about the Going Global and the website localization. You have his contact details there. Or else go and talk to Margot and Jim, who are on the call, either at the Illinois, and we've got their email addresses there, either at the SBDC International Trade Center for Jim, or for the Illinois OTI for Margot. So those are the sort of next steps for us, is just to reach out to us and say, in what case would you like to get, and how would you like to move forward on looking at global websites. I hope I haven't been too fast. We've covered a lot of ground. I have hopefully left a little bit of time for some questions. And I see that there are some questions coming in here. So what I'd like to do is just curate some of them very quickly. One of the first ones that I'm looking at now, actually, it's probably going to go to you, Margot. It just says, what what does it mean to be eligible company? How do I be? What is the definition of eligible company? Margot, is that something for you that you could answer?
Of course. Thanks, Susan. Thanks for the question, and thanks for all of this great information. In order to qualify for the ISTEP program, you need to be an Illinois company, so registered in Illinois, be in business for at least a year. By SBA definition, have less than 500 employees, so be considered a small business. Have a manufacturing a product or selling a service that is at least 51% U.S. product content and 25% Illinois content, and essentially have a product that's export ready. But we'll work with you on that, and the ITC, of course, through Jim and his colleagues around the state, can help define eligibility and help you get ready to apply for the program. The program is, we do accept applications on a rolling basis. You can find the application online, or you can go ahead and email either Jim or I, and we can help you through that process as well. Thanks, Suzanne.
Thank you, Marco. Great. I'm going to take the next question, which is coming in from, and just basically says, which market should I go for first? And I think that we see companies doing two things. Either they go for their very strongest markets, or they go for their weakest markets. So in other words, either they go for those markets where they are very strong already, and they want to build up further reputation, further and cement that success. They have perhaps very good, strong distributors. They want to add an extra layer and tool for that distributor in that market. So we will typically see a company saying, I've got great sales in, whatever market it is, but I know that I could double my business there if I had an extra tool. So that's the first thing that's probably typically what we see. And typically in terms of the markets that we see, they're the big exporting markets of the world. So, China, Mexico, Germany, heading up the list. But the alternative is to say, we're strong in these markets, but we know that market over there should also be good for us. Let's use a website to really test out the market first. Get a bit of an online presence, test out market, find distributors, take a 1-year view before we get any sales in that market probably. But we'll use the website for market research and for distributor search. So that's the two things that we typically see. And I think probably there's a predominance of companies that we see going for their strongest markets. But we also see them sometimes going for their very weakest. I hope that answers the question. Another question I have here is, and this is a very interesting one for us actually, for the Online Global Illinois program, how secure are the websites you build? How secure are the websites that we would build for you? And this is something that we've actually done quite a few webinars on. We have some online resources if you want to go further into that. We also have a webinar coming up in February about data protection and security. All the websites we build are HTTPS, which means secure. On the S is for the secure side. So we build only HTTPS sites. We build them only to best practice as well, and we host only with certain very large, mainly US actually, hosting companies. To date, there has not been any major hacking of the content management systems that we use, which is called either Expression Engine or this type of word. So, we do spend a lot of time and thought thinking about security, and I think at the very baseline, we only use HTTPS for domains. So that I think gives you some, a core level of security, which you should all have for your websites in any case. Knock on wood, security though is something that one can never take for granted. That's for sure. But we do also any website that we host. We send updates about security to, and we inform clients about any security issues that we find. Another question I have here, which is that, hello, I have a distributor in Brazil. He has my website. Is that okay? Um, it really kind of depends what you mean. But for us, a lot of the time, a lot of the companies we now deal with come to us having one of their distributors owning their website. And it's not actually, in our view, a good idea in the long run. There's two things about this. The one is that the distributor then owns your URL. He owns your online address in that country, and maybe that's not what you want. This is, after all, your online reputation that's at stake. So really, I think you should try and pull it in, manage it, own it, and really run with it rather than handing over your online space to someone else who's outside the company. The other point is that if the distributor owns the website, they might not be always acting in your best interests. We've often found companies who come to us who say, well, we worked for a while with our distributors and for that particular distributor, and then for some reason it stopped working. And now we find our products are poorly placed or poorly priced, or they're up against a competitor, or there's an own brand that the distributor has launched. So again, we really feel that giving your online presence and your online address to your distributor is not a good idea. That being said, we really like involving distributors, like with media, with social media campaigns, with strategy. It's fantastic to get your distributor involved in your local presence. And they often know the best terms. They say, hey, there's a good trade show. They're the person on the ground that you can use as a resource. But for us, the tool, the localized website, is a tool that the distributor should be using, not owning. I hope that answers that question. Another question I'm getting here is just about how, for the online global program, how long do these various options take? They typically take 3 months from start to finish. Option C, which is sort of a very bespoke, customized thing, can take 4 or 5 months, depending on how many apps you want added to the website. But we would produce 2-country localized, fully functioning websites for an exporter, and we target 3 months turnaround on that. So far, again, knock on wood, haven't failed for that. So that's our timing on that. I have another question, perhaps Margot or Jim. This might be for you, if that's all right. It basically says, if I do option B, which is 2 countries websites, if I do 2 countries now, can I qualify for another 2 next year? Margot, that might be for you.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely, they can apply the following year for an additional ISEP program assistance. Okay,
thank you. That was a nice and clear way of for that. Another perhaps a final question, because I did say this would be sort of 45 minutes and it's now 50 minutes. But last question, which I'm seeing, which is something we get a lot. What is the best way to measure ROI? How do I measure the return on investment of a localized website? We, like anyone in marketing, like anyone on the web, we spend a lot of time thinking and measuring things on your website. Every client gets a full report every month, which analyzes every possible link and engagement with that website, where it went, how it went, where and to whom, did it generate leads, and so on. If it's an e-commerce website, it's pretty easy to measure the return on investment. If it's not e-commerce enabled, then you're having to talk about leads generated. And that goes about clicks, about views, about how many people like it, how many people engage with it, and so on. And that is something that is monitored and measured extensively. We have a lot of software tools at disposal, when ClickZ, Moz, Google Analytics. I mean, there's a whole sort of 6 or 7 that we use for every website, which can cross-section and show you exactly the return of and the engagement that people have with your website. So return on investment really depends upon the objective of the website, and this is something that's actually very important. Right from the start, you need to know what your website is going to do for you. And if you remember the slide where I said, there's a mothership, and then you can have things that websites that do specific things at different times. Each time you have to say, what is the objective of my website today, and how do I measure that? If I've got a trade show coming up, last year I did a trade show, this year I'm doing the trade show, this year I've got a website to boost it. What is the objective of this website to optimize this trade show coming up? So you define it in advance and then implement a strategy to push it forward and measure it. And the great thing about the web is it's very easy to measure and very easy to tweak if it's not working. I think I'm going to try and keep to my time. So that means that it's sort of 55. I wanted then to 55 minutes. I wanted to thank Margot and Jim very much for allowing us to talk to Illinois exporters. And I do hope you've all enjoyed and got some information from this webinar. There is a very short survey at the end of this webinar. We would appreciate just hanging on for a moment just to answer the survey. And we will be sending the slide deck, the recording, and a follow-up email with if you wanted to contact us, and it has also the contact details for Margot and for Jim. I do hope that you enjoyed it, and happy exporting, Illinois.